There we go, brother. We're on. Hey, everybody. Hey, look, we're a little different today, brother.
Just a little bit different, man. This AI software is getting really cool.
I know it is. Eh? We're not even on the country, and this is like how we're sitting here. This is crazy. Welcome, everybody, to another episode of Sales Chatter. Ryan and I decided to get together. We're in the Mick Logistics studio over here, and we're loving it. We got a bunch of fans sitting over here, which might join us later on. I'm sure Jackson will, anyways, when he needs a few more pets. But welcome to Sales Chatter. What's going on with you, buddy?
Oh man, I'm excited. First and foremost,
It's a little different.
I love this though. We did our previous episode, I think, a couple months ago together, and I love this. I think, just like with COVID, we get tired of the Zoom calls, being able to like connect one-on-one and actually have a conversation, you know, and things like that. But my weekend went really well. It was actually busy for the first time. I actually came home. I went out both nights, and for the first time, I came home like after 12 o'clock, which was not fun for the dogs. But But I know you had something.
So
really
how do you do that? Like, what time do you leave, and what time do you get back?
We give ourselves they're pretty good now. As everybody we're pointing here, but my two dogs are right here, and we usually get about 6 or 7 hours before somebody gives an accident. So we're blessed,
That's good. That's good.
There we go. What about you, brother? I know you had some pretty cool things on the weekend that you got to.
Yeah, we went and saw Epic Eagles, which was an Eagles tribute band. A little Hotel California and all that, and we went to a place called Chudley's, which is this like pumpkin apple orchard, and they built this. And for anyone that's around or in the Milton area, you'll know Chudley's, and they built this super cool outdoor stage, and they got awesome pizza and full bar and drinks, and we sat at tables and just rocked out to the Eagles. It was actually super cool. Everybody gets up and dances in front of the stage, and there was like people from 80 plus years old to like kids that were 5 just kicking it. It was so cool. It was so cool. Yeah.
That is awesome. Yeah, everybody, if you're in Milton, anywhere, you got to go check out Chudley's.
Yeah.
One of the coolest apple farms out there.
Yeah, and next week's actually their last concert of the season, because they use a lot of university students and stuff, and the weather's just getting a little too chilly. But when the show's done, they kind of not push you, but they
escort you.
Yeah, they escort you out the back, and they have a fire pit that is literally like 60 feet by 60 feet, and it must have 2 bush cords of wood in it. So like a bush cord of wood is like 4 feet high, 2 feet deep by like 8-9 feet long. And they got at least 2 of those, and just the fire's rocking. Like no matter how cold it is, you're toasty warm, man. It's like, man. But you couldn't even roast marshmallows because your like eyebrows and stuff will fry off before you get that close. You know what I mean? But it's such a good time. It was such a good time. My voice lasted, which was absolutely incredible. And then, just kind of hung out for the weekend. I just enjoyed myself. It was a great weekend, man. It was the weather's turning beautiful. Like you're kind of chilly in the morning. You got to, if you're driving in the morning, you're probably already putting on, well, if you're up here, you're putting on your seat warmers, maybe even your handlebar, your steering wheel warmer. And then by the afternoon, it's like you got a t-shirt and shorts and flip-flops on. Well, I do. Maybe not all of you do. Because for all y'all that are in an office, you might not be able to do that. But hey, you know what? Now that's the thing. So it's going to get complicated today, right?
Hey, bro, it's going to be?
It's going to be. We got comments over on this side. Bill says, "Good morning, team, woohoo!" And Lisa says she loves the Eagles. It's a great band, great. Band.
Yeah, not the Philadelphia Eagles though. They've been they haven't been playing this well this season, But it's but kudos to you. I got a serious question for you because like when I heard that. Did you take your karaoke bar thing, your little
out of my office? Yes.
No, did you take it to the event, or did you
no.
Like,
so it's amazing how good I sing when there's music playing over top of me. I literally should quit my day job and become an artist, because when there's music playing over top of me and my voice is drowned out, brother, in my head I sound like Mick Jagger in his prime. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like I'm awesome. And then we get in the truck on the way back, and we start singing songs, and I realized like I'm not even coming close to quitting my day Like that letter of resignation's nowhere near being writ. Let me tell you, it's the
I was gonna say that's pretty ironic because that letter of resignation. Who's that? Because you're self-employed, so it goes to
Well,
yourself,
it goes to
right?
myself. Yeah. So I could like I could just pretend I got it.
Yeah.
And see it. You know what I mean? So this week, everybody, on Sales Chatter, we have the great Glenn Poulos joining us tomorrow, who's the author of Never Sit in the Lobby. Now, if y'all are like us and really enjoy sales books, this is a sales book you should get your hands on. It's 57 winning sales strategies, factors to grow a business and build a career selling. And it's funny, Ryan, because I'm going through the index page or whatever you want, a table of contents, and I'm like, well, we talked about this, we talked about this, we talked about this, and it's a and not tooting our horn here, anyone. But it's really cool to see when you see authors that are, international and New York Times best-selling authors writing a sales book about strategies and tactics we teach every single week. And this is one of them. And so today, because we didn't want to give too much away before we have Glenn on the show tomorrow, but we did want to prime you for some of the stuff we're going to talk about tomorrow. So I'll let you introduce what we're going to talk about today, Ryan. We're going to kind of jump a couple chapters and start on chapter 3.
Yeah, so chapter 3, as we're kind of going through this book, for discussions to talk about, and the one that stuck out to both of us is the power of 3. And I know we talked about a little bit about the power of 3 a couple weeks ago, but I just think there's just so much power into it. So we're just gonna read off basically the first part, and then we're just gonna kind of get into our thoughts and into logistics, because like my mind started going right away into like logistics. So it says here, chapter 3, power of 3. Wow, chapter 3, power of 3. Kudos to Glenn. We gotta ask him about that tomorrow, right? But it says here, I'm not sure what started or created the power of 3, but we're intricately bound to this concept. So much of the things that we do in our lives, in the world, is broken up into the power of 3. Things as small, medium, large, good, bad, and indifferent, snap, crackle, and pop,
Yummy.
gold, silver, and bronze. For me personally, my dogs, Millie, Jackson, and Vina. For me, Dan, when I think of the power of 3, I start thinking about, like the Christian way, where it's just like you got the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit as well, right? So it's so an amazing thing. So I would love to get your thoughts first, like when you hear the power of 3, how it's kind of like affect your life, and then maybe later on we'll just start talking about sales specifically, logistics for logistics reps out there.
Well, I mean, the first thing I think about is everything happens in 3s. Right? Like our whole lives, we've been programmed to everything happens in 3s. When something bad happens to you, 2 things bad happen around you, it's like there's only one more and then it's done. And I don't know why anyone came up with that, because if one bad thing happens, why don't you just say, okay, that's the bad thing, and you know what I mean?
Sort of power 1.
Yeah, the power of 1. But when you start looking at it, some of the best brainstorming sessions I've ever had were with 3 people. Right?
Yeah.
Like we look at when you, Damon, and I, back when I was sick, when we brainstormed, there was 3 of us, and it was that ongoing conversation that really sparked huge amounts. Like when I sit down and my snowmobile club, when we're brainstorming and there's 3 or more of us, it's just all these ideas start coming. So for me, I immediately start thinking of, okay, well, if everything happens in 3s, that means good and the not so good would happen in 3s. And so for me, that's where the power of 3 really starts. But what actually got me, that Glenn talks about, is he says, when you're talking about presentations or sales calls or whatever, he says, tell them what you're going to tell them, and then tell them what you told them. The power of 3. And if you think about it, if you listen to gurus or influencers, it's like, okay, what I'm going to share in this video is this, and so the individual can say, yes, I'm interested, or no, I'm not, right?
Yeah.
So what I want to talk to you about today, Mr. or Mrs. Prospect, is this, and this is what I'm looking for. Then you tell them about it. Then you say, okay, now that I told you about this, and this, kind of what's the next step? And if you think about it, this is kind of the way most sales calls go, right? Yeah. For people that actually qualify.
I just had one this morning, exactly. It just went like that.
So share with us how it went.
Yeah, so same thing. We had basically a referral from one of our customers reach out to us, and we booked a meeting today. And they were kind of saying what they're looking for in terms of like relate. Like they named specifically that they're not like they're not chasing for bargain rates. They're relationship based. They're looking to overhaul things, and they're looking to do some trials. And funny enough, they're like, we're gonna do a trial of like 3 to 6 loads. To kind of the power of three again, once again. And
Yeah.
Dan, I think where we kind of like when we look at the power of three, you just brought up a great point by saying, when people say about death, the power of threes, and you're talking about speeches. Everybody knows that I'm a part of Toastmasters. I just did a speech last week where I actually said, I'm going to tell you 3 things about imposter syndrome, right? So I feel like anything when it comes to lists, or I feel like anything in general, like there's such beauty in seeing like the power of three specifically there. And like you said, gurus, they talk about different things. For qualifying specifically, I would love to ask you, what are some 3 things that you like to kind of ask, or do you even? I feel like if you think about the 3 things, it comes out more organically when you don't think about it,
Yeah.
and then you just reflect on it. You're like, oh my god, I brought up 3 things, right?
Yes.
So, what are your thoughts, brother?
So immediately I go to QCESP. So it's qualifying, clarifying, expert story position. I love three, hence the reason I came up with the sales diamond instead of the baseball diamond. 3 bases, the 4th base is the next logical step, your customer. I love putting things in threes. I actually separate my backyard when I'm cutting it into 3 sections.
Get out of here.
Yeah, I do. And it's funny because as I'm reading this, I'm going, oh my God, that's scary. Like that is just and it you don't. And until I read The Power of Three, I didn't really think about it. Do you know what I mean? Like when you say it's unconscious. And so for me, it's that QCESP. It's what's the primary and secondary reason for you to add or switch a service provider. So I'm asking kind of 3 questions inside of that. What's your primary and secondary reason? And then why would you switch a service provider? And then when I get that, I typically get 2 answers, but I go QCESP. So clarifying, qualifying, and then expert story positioning for each of those answers. So it's like you're tripling it out. And that for me was really the aha moment of that chapter is like, okay, so when we're delivering, I'm talking as if it's a speech. When we're on a sales call, it's like I have my qualifying question that I ask, then my primary and secondary, you know, my primary and secondary reason for calling. So I can put that into a 3. Like, what's my primary objective of the call? What's my secondary objective of the call? Right. So, and then I have my primary question, but my primary question can go each way. So I'm finding more and more things. And I don't know if it's like you guys have probably all had this happen to you before where like all of a sudden you notice a car you really like and you start thinking about the car and that car shows up all the time. Right. So I don't know if it's a matter of because I'm diving into that chapter, it's like all of a sudden it's 3 starts coming up, right?
Yeah.
Obviously, I look at it and I say, you know, some of the greatest things happen in 3. What's going on, Jackson? You want to come over here?
He wants to come over here with the
Yeah.
light, the cord.
Ah,
We will lift it up and bring him on. But Dan, as you're gonna let him in here, it's one of those cool things where I think about ourselves, the power of 3, and
yeah.
we got 3 hosts today.
Yes.
We got 3 hosts today. For good old Jackson over here, but.
Yeah.
For anybody who's watching out there, like this is a great book that we're going to be having an amazing author on tomorrow, and I've kind of just started to dive deep into it. When I think about sales, I think about logistics, Dan. I think of another power of 3. I think of sales, operations, and customer service. Like those are 3 functional departments that are really needed for all those things. And what are your thoughts? Because like I know he brings it up here a little bit here, but where do you kind of group that? Because I know some places they're cradle to the grave agents, or maybe they'll have a hybrid operations and customer service. What are your thoughts on something like that, brother?
So, I mean, I look at it and I say in any business, there's 3 core functions that make a business run. Nobody. 4 core functions that make a business run: sales, operations, and finance.
Okay, there we go.
Right?
Yeah.
Like, think about it. So, and a lot of salespeople, maybe some of you, what do you think, Jackson? Yeah, some of you might actually think just sales, and then maybe sales and ops. But I think as a salesperson, if you're not paying a part of financing, you're in big trouble because that finance part of it, when you're onboarding, it's like, what are you on board for? You on board for the sales portion, you on board for the operations portion, and you on board for the finance portion, right? You do a credit app, you figure out what they want, how they want their invoicing done. Is it email? Is it not? So when we onboard somebody, we're actually onboarding on 3 different levels of our business,
Yes.
right? And then even if you go from like what are they? I guess in some of the bigger companies, they call them like corporate accounts or individual accounts, or there's another word that people use, like for high level accounts, and
Enterprise.
enterprise, that kind of thing. So whatever way you put it, it's sales, ops, and finance
Yes.
are really the 3 core functions of any company, right? Most companies fail because they don't have enough sales right out the get-go, right? And they lose on that finance piece. They lose because their funding dries up, or they think, okay, we're going to make $1 million in the first 6 months, and it takes 4 years to make $1 million, and they fail. A salesperson, we look at a salesperson and we say, okay, I've got to sell. That means I got to manage my time properly, and I got to educate myself in the industry. There's 3 things, right? So if your function is selling, it's how do you, even if you go back before that, you just walk in, it's okay. Learning what the company can do and what the company does, right? Learning the industry and learning your technique, and finding that individual voice on the phone. I mean, we can take the power of 3 and go like all day with it when you really think about it, right?
Yeah.
Eat, sleep, crap. Dogs, that's all they do. They eat, sleep, and crap, right? There's 3.
And I think one of the most important ones, especially with our Friday book that we're doing, is like, past, present, and now. I mean, and future, sorry, and future, right? And when we look at it, and we're not just saying, just hey, the power of 3, but understand where that looks like in your business, right? Like if you're, for me, for anybody logistics, any agents or anybody who's like in logistics sales, if you're looking at a niche, like don't put all your eggs in one basket and just get one. I actually have 3 verticals that I work with, like 3 different industries that I like to work with. I know Dan is like vertically as well in terms of like where he wants to be geographically. So I think like when you look at I think you can't go wrong. Because for me, every time I've kind of worked in, I've always worked with the ops person and then a customer service person as well to manage an account. So when I look at like niches and stuff like that, let it be a little bit different. Let it be 3 things. And I'm really excited to dive deeper into this book with Glenn tomorrow as well.
Yeah, and it's funny you say that, because then I'm thinking about it, and every time I've done a course, I said, have no more than 3 niches, like 3 expertise that you have. So like go geographical, go commodity, or go like equipment, and then, kind of run that route. Because I think after 3, you get confused.
Yes.
Right. The number 3 is a very satisfying number. If you're doing 3 steps to something, if any of you in your life are trying to learn something, I really suggest you break it down into 3 steps, because I'll tell you, when I first started selling, I made it so complicated, and I realized, Ryan, I made it very complicated because of the money I was making. Right. So I came from like my history before sales was buffing pewter keychains on night shift. Right. And I was making like $8 an hour. And I come into sales and I'm watching all these guys for like $1,200 profit, $600 profit. And I remember when I first landed Plusmark, Doug Derryberry at Plusmark, he's like, okay, here's your shot. Yellow messed up. Go. You get 6 loads a day for the next like 9 weeks. And I was making like $600-$700 a load. And now, for all you watching and listening, this is back when like it was $1.54 exchange rate. So, I was like, damn, this is good stuff. I mean, thank the Lord for that US Canadian exchange rate. But I remember making, and at that point in my time, I'm 17 years old. So I'm like, I've never seen this kind of money adding up every day. And then watching as I'm like invoicing $37,000, $38,000, $40,000 in commission. And it was like, this can't be right. And so what I did is I started adding all of this stuff to my sales process to say, like, there's got to be like this has got to be just like pure sheer luck. This isn't the way it is. And there's got to be all these complicated steps. And I broke it down to 3: qualify, find out why they buy, and fulfill the why.
Can you break that down, like for each, like I want everybody, because Dan is actually giving you guys a master class right now in sales. So if you are watching, you got to take this information, because even myself. So like you said, qualifying. Let's talk about that.
So for me, qualifying comes 1000% for my ICP, right? My ideal client profile. My number one thing dealing with anyone is I'm a resource. I'm not a commodity. And this is one of the courses we put out with the 30-day trial is teaching sales reps how to be a resource to your customers instead of a commodity, but more importantly, asking the questions to find out if logistics suppliers to them are just a commodity. Because in Glenn's book, he talks about the 80-20 rule as well, which we've talked about.
Yeah.
The 80-20 rule states that 80% of your business is going to come from 20% of your customers. So I wanted to make sure that 20% was people I really wanted to hang out with.
Yes.
Like people I really wanted to communicate with, because it did not take me long in this business to realize I spend more time with my customers, my colleagues, my prospects than I do my family.
Mm-hmm.
It was just what it was. And especially, gosh, in my early days, it was like I'm answering phone calls till 9-10 o'clock at night because I didn't understand how to, I was cutting corners during the day, which then made me take calls at night. But back to the qualify. For me, it was very simple. Does this individual represent my ideal client profile? And if they don't, I don't care how much business they have. I really don't want to deal with them. And then if they represent my business profile, then I go into why they buy. And I'll give you a perfect example. So I had one prospect that was like perfect, Ryan. He was like, oh man, yeah, I'm all about relationships and I love this. And then once I find somebody, I'm like, okay, perfect. And I asked the question, what do you think? He goes, oh man, without you guys, like I'm dead in the water. So I'm like, okay, he knows that we're a resource to his business.
Yeah.
And I said, okay, so what makes you change? And he says, oh, I got to get 3 rates for my boss and show him the 3 rates. And then based on that, I can deal with the carrier. And that to me is not a resource. That's a commodity because it's dealing with price. And I said, so if I give you good pricing, but then I show you what I can do, well, at that point, then we start doing business. You won't ask me for pricing. I go, listen, I get it if I'm like $500 too high, but if I'm 75, $80 higher, would you give me the business? He said, no, I have to show my boss, and my boss, I have to do the lowest rate. So he qualified as an individual, but the corporation did not qualify when I found out why they bought.
Yeah.
So, but if you find out why they buy, so why does this person, this individual, this company, why do they buy new suppliers? And then your third base, once you find that out, your third base, all you do is fulfill the why. See, as sales reps, a lot of the times we jump from first to third.
Yeah.
Or we go from first to second to home base. And the reason I use the baseball diamond theory is because in baseball, if you go to first, you have to go to second to go to third to go to home, or else you're out.
Mm.
So that's just the mentality that I had, was I have to follow this process. And when I just focus on third base, like you don't see any baseball player that's on third looking back to second to wondering if he's going to run back to second and steal second. The process doesn't happen like that. So you have to follow through. And anytime you miss a base, you're out.
Yes.
Right. So that was, for me, the very simplistic approach when it comes to sales. And how do I get more done with less time? So if I'm only focusing on it's like building a house, right? You can't start on the trim until you frame the house and put up the drywall. But you can't put up the drywall until you frame the house and put in the electrical. But you can't put in the electrical till you frame the house. So there's steps in all of these processes. And I just found myself, Ryan, getting so far out of the way, like out of the off the highway, if you will. And I'm on all these country roads when I'm like, and my sales timeline was lasting forever. Like it was taking forever. And then I was having people where, you ever done that where you're like, oh dude, this next call, I got this.
Got them.
And then 7 more calls later, you're like, why isn't this account closing?
And then they ghost you.
Yeah.
Right?
And then it's done.
Yeah.
It's over,
yeah.
right. And you're like, dude, and then of course, that's where salespeople get a bad rep, because they're like, oh, no, I got this account. And it's like, no, you don't, right? Like I just faced this last week, where months leading up to a meeting this week, I got a text on the weekend from a prospect, and he says, listen, like the guy you're going to meet with resigned.
Wow.
And I'm like, oh, okay. And he says, so I'm kind of in the air here. I don't know. He goes, I could bring you on, but I don't have enough time to manage the people that are going to be using it. And so it's like, okay, what do you do?
Yeah.
So you know, like these things happen in business. So we put all this work into it, and these things happen. So I found when I shorten those sales timelines and really understand, because here's another thing, right? If we look at business as if we look at life, and business as just as we do at a function where we meet people, the people that we have things in common with, we develop relationships faster, right? Makes sense?
It's straightforward. Yeah.
Straightforward. So in business, the people you have common goals with, the ability to work and help them achieve those goals means both of you win, right? Everybody has the ability to get things done and move ahead. That relationship's going to build faster,
Yeah.
than a relationship that's just like, yeah, I mean, would it be nice? Sure, yeah, but you know what? I'm just too busy to put in the time and effort, right? Like,
100%. There's certain things, like even in my life, when I look at my circle of friends and things like that, are like, do I really want to spend time with this person, right? And I'm like,
yeah,
I could have been doing something different. And I love that you just said, about like, well, not love it, about because it obviously affects, but somebody resigning during mid. I've literally had shipping managers and logistics managers resign during an RFP. One of them actually was, I was working with a 4PL. We were doing an RFP for one of their customers. Mid RFP, Dan, they've actually lost that customer. The customer called the 4PL and said, yeah, we're going with somebody else.
yeah,
So imagine all those time and resources, right? So we always talk about control the controllables, and we're coming back to like you having the power of three. Understand what you can control when it comes
yeah.
to the ICP, like you're talking about the qualifying, having those conversations with people. Those are things that you're controlling.
Yep.
So either way, like you're going through the diamonds, like a baseball player, anybody who's watching, shout out to the Blue Jays. Hopefully they get that wild card spot. But the base runners, they're only controlling what they can control. They would like the thought of stealing first to second, or going second to third, or even scoring, but that's not up to them. So it comes down to too, that I love about baseball too, is just like, it's a team game too.
Yeah.
So you understand too,
Yep.
like I can only go, like when I look at prospects on a baseball diamond myself, I'm like, okay, well, can my ops help me get them to another base or even score at that point? Because like even sometimes I'll be like, hey, maybe sometimes my job, Dan, is just to get them to first base. And then second and third might be ops, customer service, finance, if we want to do that.
Yep.
And then we bring them home. Right. So I think when we're looking at things like the power of three, I think this is an amazing topic that we're talking about, because everybody can relate. And just coming back to it, I love the fact that, when you're picking out a niche, it's something like that. There's something that I wasn't ignoring, and I saw a quote today, and like, it's crazy. It just says here, you need 3 daily wins. And I say this, I actually wrote this down in my journal today, but you need a physical win. And they put like walking, running, lifting, swimming, etc. And then it says you need a mental win, which is reading, writing, creating, learning, etc. And then you need a spiritual win: prayer, meditating, studying, growing. And it says here, finishes that you need the 3 wins so you can become a complete winner. Right. So it's funny, man. There's no coincidences in life. And I think everybody who's like, we've got about 90 days until Christmas Day, Dan. Today is the 25th already. So
That's 3:30s.
yeah. 3:30. Yeah. Well, 31, right? But
yeah.
But you're so right by saying that. So anybody who's, let's say you're starting your book of business now, or even your experience and you want to add more, maybe you got to do it 3 times the effort. Or even if you're not comfortable with certain prospecting channels, like, pick 3, do video, call, emails, or do DM. Like, find something that resonates with you in 3, so it doesn't feel like a chore to do. Right. So I just think that's just so important. And I love the stories that you just shared, Dan.
That's actually a really good point, that it doesn't feel like a chore.
Mhm.
And adding to that, I would also suggest, if you're talking about sales calls and follow up and all that kind of stuff, do the one that you enjoy.
Yes.
Because I think a lot of the times when it comes to follow up or just prospecting in general as salespeople, it's like, I don't feel like making calls today. That's fine. Don't make calls. Send emails.
Yeah.
But if you're sending introduction emails, qualify the shit out of those people that you're sending the emails to. Like, again, don't waste your time. Even if it's an email and you might think, well, it's 2 seconds because I'll template it out and I just copy paste and change the person's name.
Mm-mm.
And honestly, that's fine. I know some people are like, oh no, go personalize, and other people aren't. I mean, I get 99% of the stuff I get is not like somebody typing it out. And I know
Yeah.
because just the way it comes in. But what if you 8 mile that as well?
Mm.
Hey, like when I do an introduction, I send out a generic video and I go, FYI, this is a generic video. It's not a video I'm pretending to be customized to you. It's a generic video. So FYI. And this is why even in social, the ads that are working the best are ones that say, hey, FYI, this is an ad.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Right. Not
yeah.
the ones that try and pretend it's a post or try and pretend it's something. And then, they hook you in and then they kind of do the bait and switch technique. Right. Like, so I mean, that for us, I mean, I'm looking forward to having Glenn because I mean, if we go through some of the things in this book, Ryan,
Yeah.
some of these chapters, like for all of you,
I'm down, by the way, to give away a book tomorrow. So if you show up tomorrow and you find that's engaging, we'll give away a book live on the show.
Yeah.
What are the comments saying? I see them. I see them blowing up, brother.
Yeah. So we've got riches are in the niches. Amp up. We've got Drew, my man Drew. Also, when a client wants to go from first to home run, it can be a red flag, but not always, but often. And actually, Drew, I would say 99.9% of the time, if you're ever going from first base to home, it's because of money. Which means that you're going to strike out just as fast as you went from first base to home in 3 weeks, 6 weeks, whatever, right? So think about that for a second. You get a prospect on the phone, a prospect says, yeah, yeah, yeah. And you're like, you know what? We get along. What, $1,500 for that move. And they're like, fuck, done. We're gonna get you
sold. How do we get that up? How fast can you go?
Yeah. And then all of a sudden, within 2 days, you're running business for them. And you're like, this is great. Like, this is a good customer. And you're running business, and all of a sudden 3 weeks later, 4 weeks later, month later, maybe even 2 months later, loads disappear.
Yeah.
And you call a customer back, you're like, oh, well, the guy you took it from came in with a cheaper rate, so we gave it back to him, right? This is like every single customer that's been kind of that one call close, or that has not been qualified and has specifically looked at cash or money as the main forward momentum, they disappear.
Yeah.
Because somebody's always going to be cheaper. Somebody's going to call them up. Somebody's going to be green and able to want to take a $50 margin instead of a $100 margin, like whatever the case may be. So I agree with that, Drew. And I also think it comes down to, yep. He says, yep, zero relationship. Yes,
no relationship, man. It's you got to play the long game, right? And we always kind of talk about that. You always want to be that person who can. I actually openly, like you're talking about 8 Mile, like on my prospecting calls, I'll tell customers like I realistically maybe we got about 10 or 15 more years in this industry if I really want to go for it. I'm looking for a customer for life. Yeah. I'm not looking for a customer to transactional, because there's conversations where they kind of pipe up. Like I love the conversations where they're talking about, I get so many logistics people calling me and all that stuff, and then I make it seem, I'm like, you know what? I'm the Porsche of like logistics brokers. I don't care what you think. You can have all those people. They can talk rates. They can do all these things. And I know companies, they'll take loss leaders, hoping that they can turn a profit after a certain amount of volume, things like that. But you got to sell yourself as that person, as that true solution. Sorry, that true solution provider who is worth more. You think like those lawyers ever wonder or like worry about their price or their billables? Of course not, man. They know what they can do to get the job done. So I think it's just so important and so imperative.
And I'd like to touch on that for a second with these lost leaders ideas. I've always thought for years, I was like, no, that doesn't work. That doesn't happen. Like every company wants to be profitable right away. And all you have to do is look as far as Uber. Uber has never made money since it's been in business, but it's a multi-billion-dollar corporation. Do you know that Uber is waiting for autonomous driving? So every investor in Uber is willing to lose money now for the money they're going to make when autonomous driving hits. Now you talk about like a play for the future. It's, what is it, 5 years, 10 years? Like, so this company has made zero money ever, never made a dime, always losing money because they're reinvesting in systems and tools for the one day when that payout happens. Right. So sometimes our prospects are going to have goals, especially if we look at kind of what's happened over the last couple of years, and the amount of warehousing space is one example that so many companies have this additional cost they might have warehouse contracts that are still up. So,
Mm.
you know, by bringing you on, it's like, okay, we're going to see for the future that this is the setup for the future. This is the setup for 12 months from now. Maybe not right now. And some of your, you know, that might be some questioning that you as sales reps might not dive into that you really should dive into. You know, like I look at it and I'm taking it from a CRM perspective, you know, the conversations I'm having is with companies saying, well, we're locked into contract. And I said, okay, I understand that. What has that contract done for you?
Mm.
And they're like, well, what do you mean? And I said, well, you know, can you directly relate sales back to that CRM? Right. And they're like, well, no, it's the individuals. And I said, okay, so the individuals that are using the CRM, whether they were using a spreadsheet or a CRM, would they make the same amount of sales as they're making? Because I know the CRM you're using, it doesn't really give the salesperson the tools to grow their business. It is just a generic CRM. It's somewhere you house data. And unfortunately, with data, if it's crap in, it's crap out, and it doesn't prompt you, it doesn't do what our system does. So when I say that to them, they're like, oh, yeah, I never thought of that. Why don't we put it on the table for something to expand with over the next 6 months?
Mm.
Right. So now what I've done is I've opened up their eyes to saying, I need to monitor if this thing is actually working, because a lot of the times in business, we just start going, 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 you know, we chug along on that train. But is that train going as fast as it should? And what I mean by that is did we build a locomotive or did we build a bullet train?
Mm.
Right. And I think that as a sales rep, we need to pay attention to that. And the power of three, the 80-20 rule, like a lot of stuff in this book will turn you from a locomotive to a bullet train. I really believe it. I mean, it's an amazing book. I mean, just from oh gosh.
It's all good, brother. Do your thing.
So here's the thing: the power of three, and then he goes into the greed-based learning factor. Freedom begins with no. 10 million in diamonds. It's a lead. Pick up the phone. You only get forever to make another impression, right? Like, so I love the way he's doing all this, because it's better to be last than second, right?
Mm.
And so some of these things, and I don't know if you guys have realized this by now, but he really breaks these. Probably not, because y'all haven't read it. Sorry. uh, he like slaughters these ideas in the book that we all have. Well, you know what? Like, I'll just be third in line. Well, if you're third in line, you're better just to be last,
Yeah.
right? Because third in line is going to get very little. And when you get little, it's all going to be hassles. 20%, 80% of your customers are 20% of your business. 20% of your customers are 80% of your business. That 20% of your that 80% of your customers, that's 20% of your business. Are they a pain in the ass? Is that 80% a pain in the ass because you didn't qualify? Like, these are all questions
Gotta ask
now you
yourself.
start asking
You
yourself.
really got to ask yourself, and don't get in the rose-colored glasses, because like I've done it myself
Ooh.
too. We're thinking like, this customer, and it's just not customers too. Think about the company that you're working with, right? Like, you thinking like, hey, maybe it's just gonna get better in the next couple months, or when I do XYZ, it's just gonna things are gonna be different. Look at your relationships, look at everything around you, and understand like if it doesn't serve you, then it's not really worth doing. I personally think.
Hmm. Again, Drew, that's Never Sit in the Lobby by Glenn Paulson. Oh, Paulus. Paulus, sorry. And Glenn's on our show tomorrow. So if y'all want to know anything about it, we'll do a couple of posts today with kind of the timeline and the table of contents and stuff, so y'all can see what it's about. If you have any questions, join us tomorrow, because we'll be taking questions live.
There we go. So.
What else, brother? I think that's about it, right?
I feel like I want to keep going forever, because we don't get this opportunity to like do this in person. Like, I'm having so much fun. Like, this is awesome. But I know we definitely do have to close the show. But I'm really looking forward to this week. I thought last week we got some great feedback. I think we're taking up the show to a different notch, and you guys can all see it. We're seeing the participation, and like we said, if there's any topics or if there's anything that you're probably seeing on your end that you want us to talk about, let us know. Shoot Dan a DM, shoot myself a DM. Let's make this, because this show is nothing without you guys. So with that being said, we'll be excited for tomorrow, because this is why we're bringing high profile guests like this, like these amazing authors on here, so that we can genuinely learn. It's not for our benefit, even though a little bit of it is too, but it's the reason why we have
Hell,
Dean.
I'm looking for
Yeah, I know you're really looking
I'm like
forward to
all
it.
over it, brother. Because here's the thing with books. I read a ton of books, and there's always pieces of the book I'm like, I don't quite get that, right? Like, I get it, but if it was in a book, and if a book is 2 to 3 years, sometimes 5 to 6 years of somebody's life wrapped up in 286 pages of just pure power, there's got to be something more to it. Or you know what I mean? Like there's got to be more depth to it, or maybe it's just not clicking in my head. And that's why, like, I've reached out like 5 times to Eckhart Tolle. Eventually, maybe maybe I got to do 6 because
Yeah, I was gonna say the power of
3
three,
times
you know?
too, and maybe then he'll answer me because I'd love to have him on. But you know what? It'd be good if we even took this book as our next book, then had Glenn back on. You know what I mean? Like all these
Sure.
opportunities for these books to get these authors on, because ideally that would be, hey, I didn't understand this. Give me a little bit more depth into it, right?
And maybe it's things that they didn't think about, right? Because when you're writing a book as well, I haven't written a book, but when you think about this, right, you write your main point and then you go on to the next page.
Yeah.
Right. So like for us to be like, hey, I took XYZ out of this. What are your thoughts on that? And then they're like, oh crap, you know?
Yeah,
And
that's
it's
a
really
good
cool.
that's a good
Yeah.
question. I never thought of that. Yeah. Beauty. You want to take us out of here, buddy?
Let's take us out. You
All
know,
right.
we're gonna thank everybody for coming out this morning. We see the comments, and if you like this little setup of us doing this in person, let us know. So throw some ones in the comments, and let us know if you like this, because we'd love to definitely collaborate a little bit more like this going forward. But with that being said, check us out on LinkedIn, Facebook, YouTube, and X as well, and go to our website, saleschatterlive.com. We have so many amazing tools on there for everybody to kind of go. And then most importantly, if you are looking for the tool that's going to change your life as a sales rep, as operations, even in finance, take a look at bridgersystem.com. Reach out to Dan or I for a demo, and then we'll be more than happy to help you take yourself to basically hit a home run, like Dan says, take you over to home plate. So with that being said, we'll see everybody fresh tomorrow with our amazing guests, and we'll be back at it.
Done deal.
Take care, everybody.
See, this is where you're
From